Hey there, All Things MSP crew. I am here with Peter Kujawa from ConnectWise. Peter, you're no stranger to this show. We've had you on a couple of times now. And love
IT
talking.
Nation Secure, I think, was
IT Nation Secure, and we actually did one IT Nation Connect last year. Was the very first one that we attended is All Things MSP, which is we're very grateful to the IT Nation and ConnectWise for inviting us back again. So appreciate that. But one of the things I love talking to you about is data, because you're a data guy. You know, you run service leadership.
Yep.
And so the data is really key to a lot of the things that I think MSPs need to be looking at. And so the first thing is you just released your Q3 report. Is there anything really interesting in that Q3 report that MSPs need to take notice of?
Yeah, the most interesting thing I think to us was, well, there were really two things. Number one is there's been a slowdown in managed service organic revenue growth, and that's a multi-quarter trend that goes back about 5 or 6 quarters. So we saw the peak around late 2022, early 2023, and we've seen it coming back down ever since. And when you look at the chart can be pretty startling for an MSP owner. They look at it and think the end of times is here and the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse are about to ride in through the door of their help desk. But in reality, it's not, because the part of what drove that growth was high inflation. MSPs were increasing prices on their managed service offerings particularly, but also on their labor rates, 8, 10, 12%. And they weren't doing it just to be greedy. They were doing it because it was a survival requirement, because wage inflation was that hot.
Yeah.
And so as an MSP owner, majority of my cost of goods sold is my people to deliver the services. And so if those people are coming in on a Friday and suggesting nicely that they get a raise if they're going to stay, what we refer to as the Friday afternoon hostage discussion.
Right.
Well, if I do that and I match them to keep them, the impact of that's going to start hitting me in their next pay period, right? Next week or two.
Yeah.
And so that's going to negatively impact my business. So price increases were great to help mitigate that. But if I'm increasing my managed service pricing, I might not get the benefit of that. I don't get the benefit of that right away. I get the benefit when that customer renews or end of the year or whatever. And so I might have to pay that higher wage today, but not get the benefit for 6 months, 8 months, right?
Right. Well, an average of 6 months probably.
Yeah, probably. So while the revenue chart looked really fun and really sexy, in reality, that put a lot of downward pressure on gross margin, service gross margin. So as we've seen revenue growth get back to historically normal levels, we've seen profitability actually improve. Managed service gross margin is doing really well on average, and we've had a couple of good quarters there. And we had our 3rd quarter in a row where the average profit for an MSP was over 13%. And that was a couple of years ago during all that revenue growth and high inflation. That was more like 10 or 11%. So profitability is good. Growth is back to historical norms, which is 10 to 14% range. And we think that's about where the plane's going to land. It was last quarter, Q3 4-quarter revenue growth over 4-quarter revenue growth for managed services was about 10.3%. So you got to be putting in the work on sales and marketing. You got to be investing in that. You should be investing. Best in class right now is about 14.5% of gross margin should go into sales and marketing. But if you do that and you focus on efficiency and you focus on running a great MSP, all the blocking and tackling stuff that we've been preaching for years and years on how to run a high operational maturity level MSP, you're going to be fine. It's a great place to be. The industry is continuing to grow double digits and profitability is doing really well. And we think it's going to be 2025 is going to be a really good year.
So no 4 horsemen.
No 4 horsemen, no. Not yet.
No, and if the stock market is any indication, as of this week, I think everything is going to go up. So
well, we had an interesting data request about 3 months ago from another a media contact who reached out and said, "Do you guys have any data on a correlation between presidential elections and MSP growth?" And we said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. How could you even think of that question? There's no possible way there's a correlation. But of course we ran it.
Right.
And there's a definite correlation. So the last 3 presidential election years, 2020 had one other thing going on in it, the minor impact of COVID. But the last 3 election years, 2020, 16, and 12, all 3 of them showed the exact same pattern of a drop in growth of total revenue. So projects, product, and managed services. A big drop during the presidential election year and a really nice bounce back the following year.
Yeah.
Now that we're 3 quarters through the year, we ran that for this year, and this year's going to show the same thing.
Yeah, I would think that that's true across the board, though, on a macroeconomic level, that people hold off on projects during an election year, regardless of whether it's IT or not.
Yeah, I mean, certainly in the customer base of the average MSP, those are small, medium, small enterprise businesses. They're hearing all year during the election year about how terrible the economy is from the non-incumbent party. And there's uncertainty. I'm looking at it and saying until the election day, unfortunately, as of today, there's certainty. 50% of the country is really happy about that certainty. 50% is really unhappy about it. But 100% of the market has a degree of certainty.
Right.
So now companies can move forward, pull the trigger on those projects. You'll start to see, I think, a lift from that, starting with orders starting soon. And so that revenue, some of it will hit in Q4, but most of it will hit in Q1 and 2 next year. But we think next year will be a good year. Plus interest rates, if the Fed continues to cut rates, that should fuel the economy as well.
So the MSPs need to prepare for this and make sure that they're ready to handle this influx of sales and marketing, because it's going to take sales and marketing to get those projects, unless they were things that they can revisit. And that's another thing, is they're going to need to go back to their closed lost opportunities over the last 12 months and try and revive those, because there's a good chance that now that that certainty is in place, that those projects have a better chance of coming back to life.
Yeah, if the MSP is doing QBRs, as the name strongly suggests, quarterly, they should be doing IT roadmaps with their customers. They should have a good handle on what projects that customers held off on, and be able to really go back and have those discussions again. There's probably a comfort level. But I also think it'll be positive for new logo growth, because if I'm a company that has been on the fence as to whether to start this relationship and I'm looking at signing a longer term contract on it, I may want to wait because I don't know what my business is going to look like. Well, now I have a better idea. So I think it's a good thing all around.
Awesome. Now, the last time you and I spoke, you guys had just released some data on NPS and MSPs. Have you seen any new information or feedback from MSPs based on that data?
Yeah, it's triggered a lot of interesting questions. So what you're referring to is we did a special section in our annual profitability report that we released in June this year. And that special section covered the correlation between Net Promoter Score and profitability. It's long been our contention that the top quartile, most profitable MSPs also have the happiest customers. And that's in spite of having the customers that pay the most per seat. Top quartile folks charge a lot more. But we've long believed that they deliver better quality, that they have their data shows that they sell a much more complete managed service package, a higher percentage of the time. So all these things we felt like would show that they had happier customers. But we didn't. We decided to run the data set and see, and it showed exactly that. The top quartile folks definitely had the highest customer satisfaction. Net Promoter Score was much higher. The interesting nuance that's triggered the most questions is that when we went a layer deeper and we looked at specifically service gross margin and we correlated that to Net Promoter Score, what we found was that if you have a Net Promoter Score, it ranges from, at worst, a minus 100. At best, it's a positive 100. So if everybody gives you a 1 to a 6, in other words, everybody's a detractor, you'll be a negative 100. If everybody gives you a neutral, a 7 or an 8, you'll be a 0. If everybody gives you a 9 or 10 as a promoter, you'll be a positive 100. So a good score for Net Promoter is about a 50-ish. You see companies like Apple and Costco in that 50, 60 range. Our data showed that anybody under a 10 Net Promoter Score also had really bad service gross margin. That those tend to be chaos factories. They're probably selling a really low-priced offering, so their gross margin's low, their quality's low, their customer satisfaction's really low. But when you got up to about a 10 to a 20 and up to then about a 50 to 60, in that range, gross margin went way up. So, but what was interesting and has led to the most questions is once there's a point of diminishing returns. Once you get to a 60 or higher, gross margin actually goes down even though customer satisfaction's off the charts. And so the lesson of that is that if you're going to do crazy things to drive CSAT, if you're going to staff to have somebody live picking up a call 24 hours a day or within 30 seconds every time somebody calls, regardless of how busy, you can do all these things and your customers will probably be happier, but you need to charge for that, and there's a point to which it's hard to do that. So those guys who have that MPSs that are in the 70, 80, 90 score, you can do that. And again, you want to make sure you're charging for that. But the other thing you need to look at is if you're going to maintain equivalent profitability, you need to trim costs in other parts of the business. So if I'm delivering that kind of CSAT, for example, well, I shouldn't need as high of sales and marketing budgets because I should be getting a lot more referrals.
Right.
And so, and that's a strategy. That's a perfectly good strategy. It's just, I can't be all things. I can't be crazy on service delivery and drive that level of CSAT and spend a ton of money on back office and spend a ton of money on sales and marketing, or I'm not going to be as successful.
Yeah, especially without charging for it. Because, I mean, there is something to be said for offering that one-of-a-kind experience that most people are not going to deliver, but then charging for it appropriately so that you're maintaining that profit margin.
Yeah, and a couple other keys with the data is every org out there can have NPS scores that are 90 plus if they do the car dealer thing. And, you coach your clients before you get the survey, I need you to give me a 10 or we'll find you and hunt you down or whatever, right?
Right.
This is really designed to measure legitimate NPS. That either it's an independent survey going out or it's a survey going out to the decision maker at the org. It's not the person that you just did the ticket with. It should be whoever signs the contract. Because that's who you really want to know how happy they are. And if that's the case, if you're not coaching your clients and you're sending it to the decision maker, a 40, 50, 60 NPS is a really good score for a managed service provider.
It is. It's even in other industries, that is a top level score.
You bet. So it's not saying to dog it, to not try to deliver really good customer service. Do it. A 40, 50, 60 is really good customer service. But yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And then you guys have one more thing coming up, and that is your compensation report that you do.
Yes.
And right now you're collecting information for that. What kind of information do you guys collect for that?
We collect data on total compensation, what we refer to as TAE, which is targeted annual earnings or total annual earnings, depending on who you talk to. But we want to know, we have over 60 different common positions for MSPs that we benchmark. So help desk positions, level 1, 2, 3, service desk manager, dispatcher, project manager, project coordinator. We have different engineer positions, security engineer. But we also collect sales and marketing, account manager. We can, and so they're going to enter in a few things. They enter in for each position total compensation. They enter in what percentage of that compensation is tied to variable comp. So that, and we provide a lot of data on that to say, based on the level, what should you be tying to variable compensation? We ask questions about things like, this year we're asking about attrition rates for those positions. And so they're going to enter them in by geo, and when they get the report has information by geo specific, so they can see by years of experience, what do people make. It's a really, really good way to get a handle on, am I paying too little or am I paying too much in some cases? And for MSPs, this is 80% of your cost of goods sold is your people expense. You better get it right.
Yep.
And so that report, we do it every year now. It's been a really, really highly praised report. We've heard great feedback on it. Every year we add some new positions to it to capture new data. And anybody who submits their data into the system will get a free copy of the report. It's normally $2,000. It's open till the end of November, and you do not have to be a current client of Service Leadership or ConnectWise to submit your data. Anybody can do it and get a free copy of the report.
That's a great deal, because I really think that, you mentioned it, that labor expense is their biggest expense. It's also one of their most variable expenses, because people come and go. They have to hire when they don't expect to have to hire, and sometimes they have to hire somebody at a higher price than the person who left.
Yep.
So there's so many dynamics here that if you have, if you're armed with the data to be able to make decisions better and faster, I think an MSP, especially an MSP that's focused on growth, can really leverage a report like that to be on the ball and make decisions a whole lot faster. And delays in hiring can kill you.
Yeah, and we also it's a retention tool. If you're not paying your people at the right level, somebody else will. And we also have guidance in there on incentive compensation and what's really unique that Service Leadership's able to do that nobody on the earth can do, because we collect profitability data. We correlate profitability by quartile to how compensation is getting done. So there's a lot of information in there that'll say differences like the best in class last year paid 2 to 3 times as much of a percentage of total annual earnings in incentives as the bottom quartile. Bottom quartile paid more, and they had less of it tied to incentive comp. And so we have all of that information in there, and we explain it all in the report. It's well worth the time to do it.
Absolutely. I mean, it sounds like it's worth the $2,000 and well worth submitting your own information to get it for free.
For sure. Yeah.
Now, when do they have to submit their information by to get the report?
Our portal has been open. By the way, anybody, I would suggest anybody watching go to LinkedIn and follow Service Leadership on LinkedIn. We advertise these as all these things come out. But the portal opened up at the beginning of October, and it'll stay open until the end of November.
Okay.
And so right when the portal closes, we will spend the next week running an early look at inflation data, and we will send out the other value add. Anybody who puts their data will get a free short report, about 10 pages, in December, second week of December, that'll give our view on what it'll look like next year. And so that's really helpful for budgeting. Right?
Okay. That sounds great, and I'll put all the links and all of that down in there so that they can just click on it and go to it and do that. And really do appreciate you offering that to the All Things MSP community, and absolutely appreciate you coming on again and sharing data, because to me, this is how MSPs really need to learn to grow, is to lean on that data.
Yeah, absolutely. The model, it's not like when I got into the business running an MSP in 2010, we were all trying to figure out, is this even a viable business model? All you can eat, and people were like, are you crazy? You're going to
business model? What's a business model?
And we didn't know how to price it. We didn't know what our margin should be. And so these days, all of that's available. And so the number one advice I have for any MSP out there is benchmark. Know how you compare to the industry, and know what things should you be working on. And my close corollary to that is join a peer group. If you can get into a group, we benchmark all the Evolve community, for example. If you can get into a group, not only will you be benchmarking, but you can learn what everybody else is doing in the group, get guidance back, and this is a great industry. It's an industry that shares, that helps each other.
Yes.
So take advantage of that.
That's why we do what we do.
Yeah, you bet.